Welcome back to Singles Exchange, a podcast that focuses on conversations, connections, and community. I'm your host, Joy J, and as always, I have a very interesting topic for you. Before we get started, I want you to make sure to like and subscribe and follow Singles Exchange on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all podcast streaming platforms. We always have something fun going on, and you don't want to miss it. So, with that being said, get comfortable and let's exchange. All right, so today my layout will be a little different. Normally, for those of you that don't know, I kind of write out my thoughts on a topic beforehand, and I have like little cue cards in the back where you can't see them, but I can. Well, today's topic is so meaty that I couldn't fit everything on my little cue cards, so I have my handy dandy notebook. So if you are listening to this podcast, then it makes no difference because you can't see me. But if you are watching this video, then you just got to bear with me. So I promise you we're going to have a good topic today. I know the title probably caught your attention, and that's fine. Also, a quick shout out to Tia from Sis Beauty Cosmetics. She is a young lady that I met a little over a year ago. She has a beautiful spirit, and she just recently launched her cosmetic line. So again, if you are viewing this video, then you see my beautiful red lipstick that I have on. This shade is called Wine, and it is one of my favorites from her site. So go and check her out on Facebook and on Instagram, I believe, at Sis Beauty Cosmetics. Okay, so before we hop into my topic, I want to tell you guys a little bit about why this topic came to be. So a couple of weeks ago, one of my very best friends, Danita, asked me if I watched Married at First Sight. And I was like, no, I've never really checked out that show. I've never really looked much into it. And she was like, you definitely would like it. You should check it out. Start at season 9. If you are a Married at First Sight watcher, or if you don't like spoilers, later on, I'm going to say some things about season 9 and season 10. So if you have not watched, and if you don't want me to spoil it, I'll let you know before we get there so you can stop it. You can listen to everything up until that part. But I just want to let you know that there will be some spoilers from Married at First Sight. So I've been binge watching that show, and she was right. I definitely enjoyed it. And watching that show made me start to consider other TV couples, other couples that we see in the media that we put on this pedestal as relationship goals. And it made me consider the fact that the media skews a lot of our views as it relates to relationship goals. We look at these TV couples, and we want to be like them. We want our relationships and our dating experiences to be like theirs. Not realizing that typically on TV, when you're looking at couples, you're viewing one extreme or the other. So it's either a really, really good couple or a really, really bad couple. And, the reality is that all relationships are going to have highs and lows. We're not just going to get something that's super positive all the time, something that gives you the butterflies in your tummy all the time. You're not going to have that in real relationships. There's going to be some times where it's that way, but there's also going to be some other stuff too. So I started writing out my thoughts, and I was just thinking about how TV has created these unrealistic views, and it subconsciously taught us that this is what you should hope for. This is what you should look for in relationships. This is how relationships work. So I started by polling some of the exchangers. So I put a question out today on Singles Exchange and asked them what was their favorite TV couple. And for those who responded, I asked them how would they describe those particular couples. So just getting into some of those, and I will shout them out as I go. So the first couple that I listed was Martin and Gina. Now y'all know the Martin Show was a 90s classic. We all loved it. And a lot of people tend to say, I want that Martin and Gina love. So Raquel and Lachey both said that they loved Martin and Gina. They felt like they were fun, loving, and realistic. Um, from the arguments to the relationships with their in-laws and the chemistry between them. They enjoyed it. And Raquel said that they had a tendency to make tough situations comical. She brought up the example where they went to like the Gilligan's Island type place, and they had all these disasters happening, and how it was so funny. They made it comical, they made it work. She brought up the episode where Gina thought she was pregnant, and how at the end they were able to come back and make humor of it. And the snowstorm episode as well. So Raquel talked a lot about how these particular, Martin and Gina, they made everything laughable. And I think that is a good thing to do. I think that in relationships, you should be able to make light of the situation. But the reality is, there are times when what you're going through, especially when it relates to your spouse, it's not going to be funny. It's not going to be laughable. Especially not in that moment. There, of course, will be times where you can look back later and say, like, man, that was funny. But when you're actually in it, a lot of times it's not feasible to laugh. And especially with sensitive topics like, fertility and survival on an island, it's not always that simple as they make it out to be. So the next couple that a few people listed were Dwayne and Whitley from A Different World. Raquel said that is her all-time favorite TV couple, and she says that they are both collegiate, socially conscious. They're kind of like opposites, so they had that opposites attract thing going on, but they balance each other out well. And she said that they were thoughtful of each other, hardworking, and goal-oriented. And I appreciate their journey because they met in undergrad, and they started out as friends and they kind of grew to be more. So later I am going to have an episode where we talk about the difference between dating your spouse in undergrad or in your early adulthood years and dating after you're out of school, when you're in a different environment and things have changed. But I graduated from a 4-year university, and I know that the way dating looked when I was at SIUE will never be the way that it looks now in my adult life. So it's just not always realistic. There are definitely some people who meet the love of their life in undergrad or in grad school and run off into the sunset, and they're great. But that's not always going to be the case. I think a lot of people go to college with this expectation that they will meet the love of their life. And like I said, for some people it's true, but for some people it's not. So that's them. So then I asked about another couple, and Fallon talked about Sinclair and Overton. And I think I asked Letitia as well. Fallon says that they're goofy, they have a pure and innocent love, and the outside world didn't affect them as much. Like, they were kind of in their own little bubble. So even if they had negative factors around them, they still managed to stay positive within their relationship. And I think that's something worth looking up to. But I also want you guys to recognize the reality that life can take a toll on you. The things around you can take a toll on you. We are all experiencing a worldwide pandemic, as well as social injustice, as well as just the regular life stuff that was already happening. A lot of us are experiencing high anxiety. So I think that in that particular instance, like I said, they're one of my favorite TV couples as well. But that may not be everybody's situation. And I don't want y'all to think that I'm like bashing these TV couples, because I think that in a lot of aspects, they do give you something to look up to or look forward to. But you have to keep in mind that it's TV. It's scripted. Somebody wrote it. These are not actual people who are actually married to each other. They're actors. So I think that's just an important part to remember. And we'll talk about some other types of shows later. But just focusing back on sitcoms, my last sitcom couple that I personally wanted to pinpoint were the Cosbys. Now, everybody knows about Cliff and Claire, okay? And I am one of them. I am an avid Cosby Show watcher. For those of you who have Amazon Prime, it's on there for free, so check it out. But just think about the fact that the Cosby Show was a black doctor and a black lawyer in New York with 5 children. They went 8 seasons with one argument in the whole 8 seasons. It was very rare to see them disagree on finances or to disagree with each other. One thing, and I believe it was Fallon that pinpointed this, one thing that I did enjoy about the Cosby Show is that they had the mentality of putting their marriage first. Their marriage came before anybody and anything else, including their children. And while children are an important factor in relationships, they are not the only factor. You know, a lot of times we get on social media and we see these arguments of, you know, it's Thanksgiving and whose plate are you fixing first? Your spouse, your parent, or your kid? And I think that for those of us who model our lives after the Cosby mentality, Bay comes first. And that's a biblical mentality too. For those of us that are believers, your spouse comes first. And we can go to the Bible about that later. You can inbox me if you want to talk about that later. But I think that's a very important part. So those are my favorite sitcom couples. And while, like I said, I can appreciate the fact that they gave us some crazy, amazing goals, we also have to look at the reality of those things. Because it's scripted, because it's a TV show, the only arguments that we saw were scripted arguments that really only lasted 30 minutes because the show is going to end in 30 minutes. So we have to be able to, you know, get the initial argument, the anger, and the point of agreement all into these 30 minutes. And, you know, whenever it's a sitcom, it's 2 situations going on. So it's the main show situation, like whatever is the point of that episode, and then there's always this underlying situation as well. So we got to squeeze that in there too, and we got to squeeze in commercials. So, you know, I think a lot of us look at that and we tend to say, like, this is what I want. This is the life that I want. This is the type of relationship that I want. And there's nothing wrong with setting goals, but just keep in mind, don't be jealous or don't start comparing yourself to these people, because somebody wrote that. Somebody made these characters up in their mind and put them on a screen. It wasn't a thing of these are actual people that are just living their life. So, on the flip side of that, I want to talk a little bit about reality shows and those dating shows. So when I think about shows as it relates to dating and relationships, the first shows that come to my mind are like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, or Temptation Island, or Flavor of Love. Those types of shows where, and I don't watch Temptation Island, so I may be wrong about the gist of that show. But those other shows where there's, you know, let's just use Flavor of Love, and you have 10 to 15 women who are vying for this one man's time, attention, and affection. And it's almost like a game show where the person who ends up with Flavor Flav, they're the winner. They get the prize. And all of these other women are just like heartbroken and sent away. And the reason why I'm skeptical of shows like that is because I think it gives us the mindset that relationships are like a prize or something. And if you know me very well, you know that my motto is relationships are not a prize and being single is not a punishment. There's just different phases of life. Most of us will be single at some point in life and we will be in a relationship at some point in our life. That's literally just the way life works. But it doesn't mean that, oh, because you're a good person or you had more credentials, that you are like winning at this thing called life and somebody else isn't. That's not the way that relationships work. Because relationships take work. They're not as simple as you got a winner and a loser. That shouldn't be the setup. So I think that those type of shows tend to make people feel like they're missing out or they lost. And if that's you, if you are in a place where you feel like I'm single and I feel like I'm late in life because I'm not married or I'm not even actively dating or I don't have somebody, I don't have a companion. That's not the case. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, and it's okay. You're still valuable. You still have worth. You didn't lose anything. Like, love on you, boo, because you got it. So, another thing about reality TV shows is I think that in those instances, especially when it comes to like those bachelorette type of shows, people tend to hide certain parts of themselves. They only tend to display the good parts, so to speak. So anything that they deem as not like a good relationship characteristic, they hide it or they don't show it. If you notice, I was an avid flavor of love watcher too. So if you notice, the women would like try to cook for him and would try to put on like a sexy swimsuit and get in the pool with him, and they were very adamant about spending time with him. Those are the types of things that make you say, okay, we see all of your good characteristics and all of your good aspects, but the perfect person doesn't exist. So where do your flaws come out at? Where do the things that we will deal with in long-term relationship, like when are those things gonna pop up? Because they're gonna pop up. You all know my philosophy is that the perfect person does not exist, and whoever you get with is gonna have some issues, some type of flaws. So I think that on those shows, they're more inclined to lie, for lack of a better term. We lie and we say that, I'm the perfect one for you and you should pick me. And we don't really get to see the where are they now. I know for the most part, especially with Flavor of Love, he ain't stayed with none of them women. He kept going back to New York. So it was like, why are you keep continuing to do this show when you're going to end up back with the same person? And if that's who you're drawn to, that's fine. But don't keep putting other people's hearts at risk for it. So that's my thoughts. Also, I think that sometimes, and like I said, if you're watching this video, I'm just looking down at my notes because I had so many. I think sometimes those type of people give interview answers. So what I mean by that is when you're on a job interview and they ask you a negative question. So they ask you like, what are your flaws or what are your weaknesses? We have been taught to give an answer that even the bad is dipped in good. So saying something like, one of my flaws in the workplace is that I stay really calm under pressure, and people tend to think that I'm unconcerned when I'm actually just trying to think it through. So something like that. That's an interview style question or an interview style answer where even the bad stuff is really good or it's dipped that way to look good. And I think that that's what happens with a lot of TV shows. Now, here's where we're going to go into some spoilers for Married at First Sight. So again, if you are an avid Married at First Sight viewer, or if you plan to watch season 9 or season 10, but you have not already, just go ahead and pause this and come back after you watch, okay? So, in season 9, there was a basketball player by the name of Matt, who, if you have never watched Married at First Sight, essentially these single people sign up to be matched with someone else in their own city to be married. So they literally meet them at the altar on their wedding day, and they get married. It's a fully legal marriage. They are sent away for a honeymoon for like a week, and then they come back to their hometown and they move in and do life together for 8 weeks. And at the end of the 8 weeks, they decide whether or not they want to stay married or whether or not they want to get a divorce. So that's just the real basic premise of the show. Matt in season 9, he said on his decision day, if I had known then what I knew now, I would not have signed up for this show. For me, I think that Matt did not understand the magnitude of commitment that comes with marriage, the magnitude of work that comes with marriage. And he didn't just hurt himself, he hurt someone else. He got someone else involved. But I think that initially in his interview with the experts, because the experts are the people that match them, he was very career oriented and looking for love, raised in a home where his parents were married and then they got divorced. So I think that he framed all of his bad stuff and made it look good. And then in season 10, there was a guy named Michael. So again, no spoilers. If you haven't watched it, just turn it off, come back later. So Michael, he was a liar. He literally lied about everything. Like, he lied about his job, his income. He had some childhood trauma that he had not dealt with. And he is actually the person that came to mind when I was writing these thoughts out. I really think that he framed the fact that he had all of these small jobs. He framed them like, I might make $20,000 here and $30,000 there and $10,000 here, but total I make $60,000. So now I'm just gonna tell the experts I have this one job where I can get paid $60,000. Like, those are the types of things that I think happen on those type of shows. I think people go in with their representative of who they are and not actually who they are. They go in. So Michael's wife, Mika, at the end of the show, she did decide to divorce him, and she said, I think that the experts matched me with who he said he was rather than who he actually was. And it was so profound to me because I think that's what happens with a lot of things, even with something as simple as online dating. If you're not telling the whole complete truth about who you are, then of course they're going to match you based off of what you say because they don't know you. All they know is what you're telling them and what you're showing them. So I think it's very important to remember that when it comes to reality TV or with any type of TV dating, it's skewed. Even reality TV, most of us by now know that reality TV is still scripted to some extent. That's not a surprise. It's nothing new. So I think that's just a reality that we have to deal with. I know I said that y'all relationship goals are trash. And what I meant by that, to sum up this entire episode, is simply that we tend to look at TV couples that are not real. And your relationship goals should be goals that you and your spouse or your partner set for your relationship. It's really that simple. Don't go based off of anybody on TV or anybody that you only know pieces of their story. We'll talk about that in a later episode too, about how things can look so peachy keen on the outside and they're trash on the inside. So I wanted to end with telling you guys about my favorite TV couple and why they are my favorite TV couple. My favorite TV show couple are Beth and Randall Pearson. For those of you who watch This Is Us, and I know we had quite a few exchanges, Sweeney and Fallon and Kayla were just a couple of them that either commented on the post or inboxed me to say their favorite couple was Beth and Randall. So kudos to you guys because they are the bomb. So Beth and Randall are a black couple in a white family who, um, to me, they are very transparent. I think we see the other side of relationships, how there has to constantly be a give and take, and how sometimes Beth will have to give more, but then there are times where Randall will have to give more. I appreciate the way that they are portrayed on This Is Us because they talk about Randall's anxiety and how that affects his relationship with his wife, how he is impulsive, and how that affects his family. Um, they talked a lot this last season about how Beth started to feel overwhelmed because she was always the one um, putting for him. She was always the one that was like, okay, you want to do this? Let's do it. She was kind of always the backbone, and she realized some of her own dreams. And she was like, listen, I support you in everything, but this is my turn. I need you to support me in this. And it takes me back to a quote from another TV show, um, A Million Little Things, where someone, I don't even know who said the quote, but someone on A Million Little Things said that you have, in relationships, you have a flower and a gardener. Every relationship has them. And you need to be the flower for a little while. You need to let that person water you. And I think that's important in understanding that in relationships, your roles will change. Sometimes you'll be the one to uphold them. Sometimes they'll be the one to uphold you. So that is my favorite TV couple. I do realize that they are not perfect. They definitely have flaws. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This one, I'm trying to try some different things. I had a meeting yesterday, so now we at the announcements part. Thank y'all for sticking it out. Yesterday, I had a really great meeting with the Singles Exchange staff. For those of you that do not know, Singles Exchange does have a staff. And we had a really good meeting yesterday about our future plans and some things that we are looking to implement very soon. So be on the lookout. Again, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. Um, and if you missed the first round of masks, we sold some Singles Exchange masks because we're in a pandemic and masks are required at most places. So if you missed out on that, be on the lookout for round two in the next few weeks. It'll be posted on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll make sure that you have all of the info that you need. So if I talked about one of your favorite TV couples or one of your favorite TV shows, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, share this with a friend. Send them the link to the podcast or to the video and let them know that this is a discussion worth joining. So I hope to talk to you guys soon. And as always, let's exchange.